Boruto's Flying Thunder God is not what it seems. As with many things in the Naruto universe, retcons happen and new mechanics are introduced. This can change the very foundation of the power system itself, and that might be happening with Boruto's new jutsu. You see, chapter 16 revealed that Boruto's Flying Thunder God isn't the real Flying Thunder God. It's more so a variant Boruto created by trying to master his space-time ninjutsu. This is the ability the Otsutsukis use to travel to different dimensions, which they naturally possess, similar to their ability to fly. What this means is that Boruto should be able to use the ability without the need of his karma seal, similar to how he's able to fly and suppress his chakra signature. That's because Boruto is now an Otsutsuki at a genetic level, which affords him the abilities the Otsutsuki themselves possess. Now what's crazy about this is that Koji refers to the space-time ability as Ninjutsu, which is interesting since in chapter 75 Amado described Ninjutsu as abilities that attempts to reproduce phenomena similar to Shinjutsu by weaving hand signs and concentrating one's chakra. In fact, he goes on to describe Ninjutsu as a pale imitation of Shinjutsu, and that's because the Otsutsuki's technological capabilities far exceed their own. So even putting aside the fact that the name Ninjutsu was created by humans, why did Koji refer to the Otsutsuki's innate ability to manipulate space and time as Ninjutsu? Which shouldn't be the case since those are pale imitations created by humans because they lack the technological advancements of the Otsutsuki. Well, the answer to that question is that the Otsutsuki's ability to manipulate space and time is likely a Shinjutsu. Now I know this might sound crazy, okay, but let me explain and it might make sense. So what is a Shinjutsu? Well, these are divine abilities that one can manipulate without needing to use hand signs, which means that flight, the ability to hide one's chakra, and indeed manipulating space and time can of course fall under this category. Now when it comes to Boruto's version of Flying Thunder God, it's described as a ninjutsu Boruto evolved from his ability to use the SpaceTime Vortex, which would of course align with Amado describing ninjutsu as derivatives of Shinjutsu. This would make perfect sense given the fact that even Boruto's new version of Flying Thunder God uses hand signs when the SpaceTime Vortex does not. So even though Boruto himself is now an Otsutsuki, he's still able to use ninjutsu because that's what he has always known. He's still a shinobi. This also adds more credence to the space-time vortex itself being a shinjutsu because even after 6 years, Boruto still didn't have control over the space-time vortex as stated by Kashin Koji, and that's despite Boruto being a prodigy. He then had to devise a way in which he could incorporate the concept of ninjutsu into the ability itself, which gave birth to his version of Flying Thunder God. This then implies that the space-time vortex itself doesn't function the same as a ninjutsu at a mechanic level, which means that it likely isn't ninjutsu. Now this isn't even the most intriguing part because Boruto's Flying Thunder God isn't even the mastered version of the jutsu. In fact, Kashin Koji outright says that Boruto doesn't know the real Flying Thunder God and also that he needs to train very hard to master the ability. This stems from the fact that Boruto can't just mark anything with his Flying Thunder God. In fact, he's limited to metal objects because they're the most suitable for marking chakra, while Minato could mark any solid surface, including one's own skin. Then you also have the fact that he can't really differentiate between two similar objects, which means that if he marks two shurikens, he doesn't know which one he'll teleport to, even if he visualizes the item. While of course Minato could differentiate between multiple kunais at the same time. Now I know some of you will mention the fact that Boruto teleported to another dimension when Minato didn't, but that's more so because he was never put in a position where he needed to. By definition, Flying Thunder God is a space-time ninjutsu, which means that it has the ability to travel across space and time, which includes interdimensional travel. It just requires more concentration for long distances, as stated by Kashin Koji. So Boruto needs to master Flying Thunder God to the point where he can do the same things Minato could, but there's also a level above that as well. You see, Boruto, unlike Minato, is 100% Otsutsuki, which means that he also possesses the ability to use Shinjutsu, which are, of course, defined as superior abilities to ninjutsu. At this point in time, Boruto doesn't understand how to use the space-time vortex, which is in some ways, of course, superior to Flying Thunder God. What I mean by this is that, unlike Flying Thunder God, the space-time vortex doesn't require pre-made seals or markings. You just need to possess the coordinates or just visualize the location you're trying to arrive at, in addition to just being able to sense the person's chakra you're trying to find, which is how Sasuke found Naruto in Jigen's dimension. One is also able to just spawn the vortex on themselves, which is how Sasuke escaped Jigen's dimension without needing to move. And you also have the ability to summon others to your location by being able to pinpoint their exact location, as Ishiki did to Kawaki. So the ability has many functions Flying Thunder God does not, including the ability to use it without hand signs. So what if Boruto's mastered version of Flying Thunder God isn't Minato's version of Flying Thunder God, but something different? What if he's able to combine the benefits of Flying Thunder God and this space-time vortex to create something better, something akin to instant transmission? You see, this is an ability used by Goku for traveling long distances instantaneously. The ability itself is usually accompanied by the user placing their index and middle fingers on their forehead to help them concentrate. Though if extra time is taken, the ability can be performed without this. So it pretty much allows the user and anyone that is in physical contact with them to instantly travel great distances, from meters to light years between the living world and the dead, and even travel outside time itself. Yeah, the ability is crazy. Now this is done by simply concentrating on a particular individual's key signature and transmitting or feeling that being's location. It's a very similar principle to Flying Thunder God and even the SpaceTime Vortex itself. The difference is that it has the benefits of both jutsus in that it doesn't require pre-made seals as FTG, and it also doesn't need a vortex to be formed. It simply manifests as Flying Thunder God with the benefits of the SpaceTime Vortex. This of course could be the final form of Boruto's Flying Thunder God as well, one that doesn't need hand signs, pre-made seals, or SpaceTime Vortex. He just thinks of a location which allows him to arrive at that location. Now I know that this sounds absolutely broken, but that's the point of a Shinjutsu. They should be godlike abilities that tower over everything else, and Boruto being 100% Otsutsuki should afford him the ability to form such a jutsu. Now this also opens up the door for something else, something even crazier than this, because I believe that humans also possess Shinjutsu, at least some of them. This takes us back to chapter 10 where Momoshiki states that Boruto carries some Byakugan blood, or in the anime where it states that he strongly inherited the powers of the Otsutsuki. Now it's important to note that the context is somewhat different between the two scenes. In the manga, Momoshiki questions why Boruto is able to sense him, which he then deduces is due to the Byakugan blood flowing within his body. This makes sense since all Otsutsuki have the innate power to use the Byakugan, despite the many other dojutsus they might possess as well. This simply could mean that the Byakugan is in a sense the root dojutsu of one carrying the Otsutsuki gene. Momoshiki is able to sense this within Boruto since he inherited that gene from his mother Hinata, who is a member of the Hyuga clan, thus being a descendant of Hamura Otsutsuki. So even though Boruto himself doesn't possess the Byakugan, he still possesses the gene itself, which allows him to sense or see Momoshiki while he's in this form. So even before getting the Karma Seal, we can see that Boruto is already being amplified by his latent Otsutsuki gene. Now the anime interpretation went a different route in some sense, but it's more or less the same. You see, in this case Momoshiki says Boruto strongly inherited the powers of the Otsutsuki in response to seeing Boruto's Jogan, which we know stems from the Otsutsuki since Urashiki identified it when they fought in the Sand Village. This means that it isn't some new dojutsu that Boruto created, it's an existing dojutsu that the Otsutsuki themselves know about. And if Momoshiki himself says that Boruto strongly inherited the powers of the Otsutsuki in response to seeing it, it simply means that it stems from the Otsutsuki themselves, which also means that Boruto gained access to this power through his Otsutsuki genes as well. The point I'm trying to make here is that one can gain access to the powers of an Otsutsuki by possessing the DNA of that Otsutsuki, which is actually a good portion of the Earth's population. This of course goes back to the fact that most humans who possess the ability to manipulate chakra are descendants of Hamura and Hagoromo, thus also being descendants of Kaguya Otsutsuki. These shinobi are of course different from, let's say, the ones Hagoromo simply gave chakra, which then allowed them to form ninjutsu, which they also then passed down to their descendants. The ones I'm referring to are his blood descendants such as the Senju, Uzumaki, Uchiha, and any other bloodline that spawned from those bloodlines. These individuals possess Otsutsuki DNA to some degree, not enough to make them immune to omnipotence, but just enough to make them excel more than anyone else. So it isn't far-fetched to say that these individuals likely manifested Shinjutsu abilities in the past as well, which they deemed as something else. This makes perfect sense when you look at the members of Kara, such as Ada, Daemon, Koda, and Kashin Koji. All of them were given cells of Shiba Otsutsuki, which then allowed them to manifest some of his Shinjutsu abilities. And while these guys were cyborgs, they were also part human as well, which is what a cyborg is. Not that it's relevant since them being a cyborg wasn't stated to be a requirement to use Shinjutsu. One just needs to be implanted with the cells of an Otsutsuki. So it's somewhat similar to how Obito and Yamato gained the ability to use wood release after receiving the cells of Hashirama. So with that said, what's stopping humans from developing Shinjutsu from the Otsutsuki cells they already possess? Well, the answer is nothing. You see, we have seen this before in the Naruto universe, such as Kimimaru being able to use Kaguya's bone technique since he was also a descendant of Kaguya. That's because, of course, he stems from the Kaguya clan from the past. Now, this wasn't explained in the series where they stemmed from. Of course, Kage didn't have another child, so the likely case is that these guys stem from either Hagoromo's or Hamura's bloodline somehow. It's similar to the Gold and Silver brothers. They're descendants of Hagoromo, but they weren't placed in a clan per se. So a lot of people in an art universe could be descendants of Hagoromo, you just wouldn't know, because the descendants of Hagoromo, such as the Senju clan, had many children outside of the clan. So even Minato could be a descendant of Hagoromo, you'll never know. So the point is that many abilities could also be considered Shinjutsu as well, such as Limbo, Amenagetic Aura, which is another space-time ability, Kamui, which is overpowered, and even Creation of all things. All of these could be divine abilities manifested in humans through their latent Otsutsuki DNA. Now of course there's another route you can take here, which is that they didn't manifest Shinjutsu per se, just ninjutsu variations of those Shinjutsu. So let's say Kaguya's Ashbone killing technique is a Shinjutsu. The bone technique used by her descendants would be the ninjutsu equivalent, which would also make sense since Kimimara's bone ability doesn't instantly turn people to ash, which means it's not the same as Kaguya's. At the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the overpowered abilities in Naruto that didn't require hand signs are simply Shinjutsus passed down from Kaguya's DNA. With that said, that is it for the video, guys. Do you think it's possible that Boruto advances his Flying Thunder God to even greater levels than Minato, to the point where it somewhat resembles Goku's instant transmission? I believe it's possible. If he's able to use these abilities separately, there must be a way to combine them, since at a very conceptual level they're both still space-time ninjutsu. So if he's able to derive a version of Flying Thunder God from SpaceTime Vortex, why wouldn't he be able to just combine those two techniques if he goes on to master SpaceTime Vortex? So that's my logic there. And also, what do you think about humans having the ability to use Shinjutsu? Should it be possible, since we have the examples of the Kara members being able to use ninjutsu despite not being Otsutsuki, just by having the cells of the Otsutsuki implanted into their bodies? And if you think that's the case, what are some examples of abilities that you think might be Shinjutsu, or just say like Shinjutsu variations that are somewhat equivalent in maybe power or usefulness? But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Drop a like if you liked it, and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.